What's up everyone, it's Ojh&x. We're back at it again, and in this Moco video I want to talk to you about some of the things I want to see in Chapter 3, some of the changes and some of the features that we've experienced over Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 which I just think need tweaking or reworking slightly, or maybe reworking completely as we go into Chapter 3. Now we've had some kind of hints and teasers that there's going to be some news coming soon, but at the moment, especially if you towards the end game, that it is feeling a little bit stale possibly. Now I will say that obviously Moco is still relatively new, we're only 2 chapters deep, and I will say that I really enjoy the game. I've played every day since launch, Elite Hunter in Chapter 1 and again in Chapter 2, but things are just kind of drying up a little bit for me now, and I think a lot of people are starting to feel the same. So I've got a few things I've asked around in some of the communities that I am in to get some feedback, and I'd be super interested in your comments down below of what are you thinking about the state of the game right now, and how are you feeling kind of heading into Chapter 3 whenever that might come. Okay, so from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2, the game has definitely improved. There is no question about that. However, for the amount of content in the game, I feel that the chapter length is just far too long. We go down here, we can see at the top of the screen there that the next chapter drops in question marks, and that has been the same. It always says in question marks until they eventually give us a date, and then if it's anything like Chapter 1, I think that countdown was like 40 days away. This is a really long chapter for the amount of content that we've got to do, and I don't mean that from just like a try-hard perspective. I think there's a lot of people that are filling up on or that are completing a lot of the content that's available, and it just seems like the chapter length is far too long. I think we'd rather have shorter chapters and a kind of a faster rotation of things. Now I know just creating content is not like a super easy thing to do, but we do kind of have this kind of flurry of activity at the start of a new chapter and then sort of nothing after that. And so that's not just from a content creator's perspective, although to prove my point, that if we head over onto YouTube, we'll see I've got a couple of the kind of more active creators pages up here. Gaz Tomo, great guy, love Gaz, hasn't updated or hasn't made a video since 11 days ago, and that was, again, he was doing one about features that he wants in Chapter 3. Before that was if Chapter 2 was any good, and then a couple of interviews, but the last time that there was any kind of game related actual content was a month ago. If we go over to Expectation here, another kind of really active creator, made loads and loads of really high quality guides. All of these are from a month or 2 months ago, so it just kind of goes a little bit flat content-wise. Ch2 here, another person who's made some really good guides and stuff. Again, he's kind of kicking out some stuff within the last few days or last week or so. But generally speaking, it kind of like dies down. We're all waiting for that bit of news. If we head over to the Moco X channel, that we got obviously the information from the past that dropped yesterday with the new samurai sword as the skin for the slugger. Kind of a peek of that there, and then some sort of information around bug fixes that they had. And then if we go over to Ch2, the community manager here, then it was yesterday, so 22 hours ago. Exciting things coming in September. Sad to see that Moco News is 3rd on Ch2's list, behind the US Open tennis final. But anyway, so there should be something coming soon. But these are long chapters, man. Like, these are long chapters. We gotta, I think there needs to be something done with that. Next thing I want to talk about then is the daily XP cap. In my opinion, the current sort of XP cap promotes people to hit their 60,000 on a daily basis, and then there's not really a great deal to sort of do after that. So it sort of promotes this kind of hit 60,000 and then stop playing sort of mentality. I think there needs to be a bit of a rework done to that, and I don't just want them to reduce the amount of XP that we get from bosses or from killing elites and stuff like that, because that happened at the start of Chapter 2, and we were killing megas and getting like 1,000 XP, and it was like painfully slow. So that is not the solution at all. But I think the current style of XP just promotes you to come on, to kind of smash through it, and then you're sort of playing for like limited reward after that. So I think the daily XP needs a bit of a rework. Now there seems to be in the game a kind of, a feeling that reaching elite level 100 is sort of like, the place to be or a target to aim for. And it's a nice round number, 100, why not? I'm at 117, there's other people that are up towards, 125, 130, but sort of once you get to elite 100, there's not like a you know, kind of a reward, like a big reward that goes with it. Yes, you get the title that goes with it. But if we go down here and we scroll all the way across to Elite 100, right up at the end, then yes, there's a few things that sort of, you know, that unlock there. But it's not kind of like a big thing. So sort of like, we push to it because it's like an arbitrary nice target for us to have. But I feel like Elite 100 should just have a little bit more of a sort of a meaning to it. The other mistake I think that was made in this chapter was the removal of the leaderboards. Now, I've never considered myself to be particularly leaderboard motivated, but it was nice to have that leaderboard, I suppose, and to look at it and, you know, see the kind of people that were around you on that particular day. And, you know, especially now that they've got the abilities like bank XP, is that you maybe don't feel the pressure to play every single day if you've got something going on. You can always come back to it a day later and you won't have dropped in the rankings. You know, you can always make that time up. I feel that removing of the leaderboards was a big mistake. I'd love to see the leaderboards back, global leaderboards, local leaderboards, friends leaderboards, all the things that we had, because I do think that that's a motivation for people to push on, just in that kind of inherent competitive nature that we've kind of got. Projects and challenges are something that I think needs to be looked at, because I don't think that going into chapter 3, having had the same style of projects and challenges as in chapter 2 and chapter 1, I feel that's going to start feeling like quite a lot of a grind, especially when it's coming down to things like kill 500 of X, which is basically what a lot of them are, is that it's not really about necessarily collecting things. You just have to go into the world and just kill, as you know, a multiple of something. And when it comes down to the challenges within like rifts and dojos, that the only challenge within there is to do it in sub 2 minutes or sub 1 minute. So I think there needs to be some variety. What I'd like to happen is that there are challenges in there which are kill X boss using a particular weapon, or take no damage from a particular boss's ability. Things that are just gonna, you know, that you're going to have to, you know, bring some kind of skill into it, or just to give you some variety, especially around the balance changing. And I'll come on to like the new weapons in a minute. But there are certain weapons that just don't get the time of day. There's just no love for those particular weapons. And that's, you know, sometimes how these, you know, games go. There'll always be stronger and weaker weapons. But something to encourage you to, you know, to play with these other weapons, some sort of challenges or something, I just think could be a really, really good way to engage us in the open world, especially once we've maybe hit the XP cap, that you can still gain rewards and XP from challenges, but also to give some variety in the rifts and the dojos, and it not just being a case of, you know, powering up and then eventually, you know, that you're going to be able to get that sub 2 or that sub 1 minute. So I'd like to see a wider, broader variety of, you know, of things to do within the projects and challenges. So I touched on it slightly there about the rifts and the dojos, and one of the things that I would like to see in the rifts or the dojos is that as they get harder, or as you progress into the elite ones, is that there is some sort of kind of like change in mechanics or something extra for you to think about. At the moment is that it just scales up in that you the boss has more health and does more damage, and therefore you scale up with that to be able to do the same fight, just harder in terms of, like, say, the damage requirements, and some of them can be a bit of a DPS check, really. So you literally just need to level up your account, level up your weapons and your gadgets, and then you'll eventually get it done. What we'd like to see, and when I say we, I have asked around, like, say, some of the community, is that a bit like maybe in a World of Warcraft or something, where the boss gets more difficult and then the abilities maybe slightly change, or an extra ability gets brought into the mix, and it's just going to give that, you know, bring that skill to it. I mean, when I talk about the skills, some of the rifts and the dojos are so RNG focused. It is insane. Sewer King is just busted for RNG. All of the guides that are out there talk about beating Sewer King when you have one of the 3 different starting mechanics that happen, and that essentially you need to wait for the one mechanic, and if you load in and it does one of the other 2, that you just reset it and go again, and you just keep resetting it, so you get the one that you want and then you can complete it. That's where most of the guides go. That is a horrible feature. That is not fun at all, and there's no skill in having to be like luck based on that. So I'd really like to see that rifts and dojos were changed so that there was a you know, a different style of difficulty rather than HP and damage output on that. The other thing I'd like to see is that the scaling of it for maybe a 2-person rift or a 3-person rift, so you can go in there and then the boss has got like half of the health of if it was a 4-person one, so that there's some content for you and a friend to do outside of PvP. And I'll come to PvP in a minute as well, but I think that'd be really, really good if there was some kind of duo and trio options that you could do with your friends, which, like I say, just around the scaling of the rifts would be a really good start to get people engaged in that. So the last couple of things then, one is going to be a rework to PvP, specifically the solo mode. I think that the large game mode is quite fun, although there is kind of far too many bots that are in there, but you know, maybe that saves, you know, being in a 20-minute queue or something. But I think the 10v10 is pretty good. I think the 4v4s are good style, and the duos is good as well if you can get yourself a partner and go run around there in your little team. But from a solo perspective, and I did a video on this yesterday, which I will link if I think it's in that corner, was a build for solo PvP to get yourself to black belt quite quickly, easy for me to say, is that the main or the most effective strategy in PvP solos is to not do any PvP and go and kill the monster in the middle of the map. Like, that cannot be the PvP option in this game. I'm all for having the, you know, the monsters that are running around in there so that you can farm them, or you can get some extra gems when you're on the way to wherever you're going. But it should be when you're on the way to kind of fight other people, because at the moment, if you kill another player, then they drop like a couple of gems, whereas you can run into the middle and kill the elite, and it drops like 100, you know, 50 or 100 or something. It's way more effective to do that. That should not be the case for PvP. It needs to be looked at. The 3 new weapons that were introduced in this chapter, for me, a bit underwhelming, I'd say, is that I think they look cool, as in they are massive on your character, but they're not like, they didn't come in and just, I don't want them to come in and break the game, so I'm aware there's a balancing aspect to this, but they just came in and it was just a bit like, okay, so we kind of nerfed good weapons from chapter 1, and then we brought in 3 new weapons for chapter 2, and I think they just need to be a bit more impactful whilst I idle out there. But the new weapons need to be a little bit more impactful, I think, when they come in. The final thing that I think needs to be a little bit more impactful is going to be the events. Now, the events come round, you know, with kind of a relative frequency, but they're just a bit repetitive, aren't they? And I feel like there's so much opportunity in this game. There are so many different game modes that there could be it PvP or PvE or whatever that you want to do. But I feel like there's some of the game modes, some of the events, sorry, just need to be a little bit more going into them. So I am super, super hopeful for some big update news that comes in September. As I said at the start, let me know down in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? That's absolutely fine. It's each to their own. This is not an exhaustive list of everything. I just wanted to generate some conversation so that you could see what I was thinking, and certainly the people in my community and what we're hoping to see. So anyway, let me know down in the comments, and I'll speak to you in the next one.